The multiverse is a tapestry woven from infinite threads, each reality governed by its own immutable laws. But sometimes those threads snap. Sometimes a hero from one universe tears through the fabric of space itself and crashes into another world entirely, carrying powers that shouldn't exist, facing threats they were never meant to fight. When Peter Parker fell through dimensions during a battle with a malfunctioning piece of Mysterio's tech, he expected to hit the pavement of Queens. Instead, he hit something far stranger. Coruscant's upper atmosphere screamed past him at terminal velocity. Peter's spider sense had been shrieking for 30 seconds straight, ever since the swirling portal had collapsed and spat him out above a planet that definitely wasn't Earth. His first coherent thought, somewhere between panic and awe, was that he was looking at the most insane cityscape he'd ever seen. Buildings, no, towers, stretched up into the clouds like metal mountains. Speeders zipped between them in organized chaos, their engines humming in frequencies that made his teeth ache. And below, thousands of feet below, the city continued downward into shadow, layer upon layer of civilization stacked on top of itself. His second thought, I'm going to die. Okay, think Parker. He twisted in free fall, web shooters coming up instinctively. He fired, thwip, and a line of webbing shot toward the nearest tower. It connected, and Peter's shoulder nearly dislocated as his momentum redirected. He swung wide, the wind tearing at his mask, and released at the apex. Another web, another swing. The rhythm came back to him, that beautiful, terrifying dance he'd practiced 1,000 times over Manhattan. Except Manhattan didn't have flying cars. A sleek civilian speeder swerved around him, its driver, something with 4 arms and purple skin, gesturing angrily. Peter's spider sense tingled, and he twisted mid-swing as another vehicle nearly clipped him. Sorry, new in town, don't know the traffic laws. He fired another web at a passing transport, using it to slingshot himself toward a landing platform jutting from a massive tower. His feet hit the metallic surface, and he immediately dropped into a crouch, every sense on high alert. The city sounds hit him all at once, alien languages he didn't recognize. The hum of technology that felt decades beyond Stark tech, the sheer scale of millions of beings going about their lives. Peter's hands were shaking. He pressed them against the cool metal of the platform, trying to ground himself, trying to think. Okay, not Queens. Definitely not Queens. He looked up at the sky. No. Skies. 3 moons hung visible even in daylight. And the sun looked slightly different, slightly more orange than Sol. The air tasted recycled, filtered through systems he couldn't begin to understand. His web shooters were functional. He checked them reflexively, but the cartridges showed he had maybe 20 good shots left. After that, a klaxon blared somewhere in the distance. Peter's head snapped toward the sound, spider sense prickling with vague unease. In the space between towers, he could see military vessels, blocky, utilitarian, painted in red and white, moving in formation. They weren't sleek like the civilian speeders. They looked built for war. Where the hell am I? His question was answered by a voice behind him, calm, authoritative, and entirely unexpected. That's what we'd like to know. Peter spun, and his brain took a moment to process what he was seeing. 2 figures stood at the platform's entrance, both dressed in earth-toned robes that looked like something from a historical drama. The older one was a man. No, a teenager, maybe 19 or 20, with sandy hair and a mechanical hand that caught the light. Confident stance, warrior's build, and at his belt. Is that a laser sword? The younger figure was a girl, maybe 14 or 15. with orange skin, white facial markings, and head tails that draped over her shoulders. She looked at Peter with a mixture of curiosity and wariness, one hand resting near her own laser sword. "Easy there, friend," the young man said, raising his flesh hand in a placating gesture. "You just fell out of the sky in a very impressive display of acrobatics. The Senate Guard has probably already flagged this platform. So, before they arrive with stun rifles and awkward questions, how about you tell us who you are and why you can climb walls like a Kowakian monkey lizard?" Peter's spider sense wasn't screaming, which was good. It was humming, which was complicated. These two weren't immediate threats, but they were dangerous. Very dangerous. He could tell from the way they moved, the casual readiness in their postures. Peter's voice cracked. He cleared his throat. "I'm Spider-Man, and I have no idea where I am or how I got here. One minute I was fighting a guy with a fishbowl on his head in New York, and the next..." He gestured helplessly at the impossible city around them. The two exchanged glances. The girl spoke for the first time, her voice younger, but no less serious. "Master, his clothing is strange, and I've never seen a species like his. Could he be from the unknown regions?" "Unknown regions?" Peter interjected. "Look, I don't know what that means, but I'm from Earth. New York City specifically. Queens, if we're getting detailed. And I need to get back because..." His voice faltered. "Aunt May, the Avengers, everything he'd left behind. Because people are counting on me." The sandy-haired man stepped closer, and Peter's spider sense intensified slightly. Not danger, just awareness. Like standing near someone who radiated significance. "I'm Anakin Skywalker. This is my Padawan, Ahsoka Tano. We're Jedi Knights, and you're on Coruscant, capital of the Galactic Republic. I don't know where Earth is, but if you fell through some kind of spatial anomaly..." "Jedi?" Peter interrupted. The word felt significant, though he didn't know why. "What's a Jedi?" Ahsoka's eyes widened. "He doesn't know what Jedi are? Master, he has to be from really far away." Anakin's expression grew more serious. "Spider-Man, I'm going to need you to come with us. Peacefully, preferably. The Republic is in the middle of a war, and unexplained arrivals, especially ones with abilities like yours, tend to attract the wrong kind of attention. We can offer protection, answers, and maybe help getting you home. But staying out here in the open?" He glanced at the sky, where more military vessels were beginning to converge. "That's not going to end well for anyone." Peter's mind raced. War, Republic, Jedi, laser swords, aliens. None of this made sense, but the immediate danger was clear enough. He was stranded in a place he didn't understand, with no resources, no allies, and only 20 web cartridges between him and helplessness. His spider sense wasn't warning him about these two. If anything, it was nudging him toward them, like they were his best option in a city full of unknowns. "Okay," Peter said finally, shoulders slumping. "Okay, I'll come with you. But I need to get home. I have people who..." His voice caught. "People who need me." Anakin's expression softened, and for a moment, Peter saw something understanding in those blue eyes. "We'll do what we can. The Jedi Temple has records spanning thousands of years and dozens of galaxies. If there's a way home, we'll find it." He extended his hand, the flesh one. "Deal?" Peter looked at the hand, then at the city stretching impossibly in all directions, then at the 3 moons hanging in an alien sky. He thought about Uncle Ben, about responsibility, about the fact that he was more lost than he'd ever been in his life. He took Anakin's hand. Deal. If you want to see more crossover battles and unexpected universe collisions, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character in universe you'd want to see in the comments below. Let's explore the infinite together, as Anakin led him toward a sleek speeder parked at the platform's edge. Peter cast one last look at the cityscape. Somewhere in this impossible galaxy, there had to be a way home. But as his spider sense continued its low, persistent hum, not warning, just awareness, Peter couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just stepped into something far bigger than a street-level hero from Queens had any right to be involved in. The speeder's engines thrummed to life, and they lifted into Coruscant's endless traffic. Behind them, Senate Guard vessels were just arriving at the platform. Too late to catch the strange being who could stick to walls and dodge blaster fire before it was even fired. In the towering Senate building, Supreme Chancellor Palpatine paused mid-conversation with a Trade Federation representative. His eyes narrowed, yellow irises hidden beneath the mask of grandfatherly concern. A disturbance. Small but unexpected. Unknown. The Force rippled with something that shouldn't exist, something that didn't fit the careful tapestry he'd spent decades weaving. He smiled, hiding fangs behind politicians' teeth. "My apologies," he said smoothly to the representative. "A minor security matter. Please, continue." But his mind was already elsewhere, reaching out through the dark side, searching for the anomaly that had just fallen into his web. The Jedi Temple rose from Coruscant's surface, like a monument to an ancient faith, its 5 spires reaching toward the sky with architectural confidence that spoke of millennia. Peter pressed his face against the speeder's transparent steel window, watching as they approached the massive ziggurat structure. It dwarfed anything he'd seen in New York. Even Avengers Tower looked modest by comparison. The temple seemed to glow in the afternoon light, its cream-colored stone adorned with statues and reliefs that depicted figures in flowing robes, their poses suggesting wisdom and combat in equal measure. "Impressive, isn't it?" Ahsoka said from the back seat. "I still remember the first time I saw it. I was 3 years old." 3? Peter turned to look at her. "You've been training since you were 3? That's when Force-sensitive children are usually brought to the temple," Anakin explained, guiding the speeder toward a landing platform halfway up the structure. "The Jedi Order has been the galaxy's peacekeepers for thousands of generations. We're trained from childhood to use the Force, to protect those who can't protect themselves." Peter's spider sense tingled faintly as they flew closer. Not danger exactly, more like pressure, as if the air itself was thicker here, weighted with something he couldn't name. "The Force. You keep mentioning that. What is it?" Anakin and Ahsoka exchanged another of those meaningful glances that suggested Peter had just asked what oxygen was. "The Force is an energy field created by all living things," Anakin said carefully, setting the speeder down with practiced ease. "It surrounds us, penetrates us, binds the galaxy together. Some beings are born sensitive to it, able to feel it, use it. Jedi are trained to channel the Force for knowledge and defense." "So, magic?" Peter ventured. "Not magic," Ahsoka corrected, hopping out of the speeder with fluid grace. "The Force is as real as gravity, more real actually. It guides us, shows us things before they happen, lets us move objects, influence minds." Peter's spider sense flared, and he jerked his head to the side. A training remote, a small floating sphere, had been drifting toward him from across the landing platform. It stopped a foot from where his head had been. Anakin's eyes narrowed. "Your reflexes," That's the second time you've reacted before an event occurred. Spider-Man. Are you force sensitive? I don't think so. Peter climbed out of the speeder, his movements drawing stares from several robed figures crossing the platform. I have this thing, spider sense. It warns me about danger. Been part of my powers since I got them. Powers, Anakin repeated. Plural. You mentioned climbing walls. What else can you do? Peter hesitated. These people had been nothing but helpful, but years of keeping his identity secret had taught him caution. Still, if they were going to help him get home, I'm strong, really strong, fast too. Reflexes like you saw, and I can stick to pretty much any surface. He held up his wrists, showing the web shooters. These let me swing around and tie up bad guys. Back home, I'm a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Friendly neighborhood, Ahsoka mused. I like that. We could use more friendly around here lately. Anakin was studying Peter with uncomfortable intensity. Your abilities sound biological, not force-based. Yet your danger sense operates like a Jedi's precognition. The Council is going to want to meet you, probably run tests. He saw Peter's expression, medical tests, just to understand what you are. You're an unknown species in a galaxy at war. Protocol requires evaluation. Species? Peter's stomach dropped. I'm human, Homo sapiens, from Earth. Human, Anakin repeated, testing the word. Never heard of that species designation. Come on, the Council is in session. Best to get this over with quickly before the Senate Guard catches up and makes this political. They walked through corridors that seemed designed to make visitors feel small. High ceilings, polished stone, shafts of sunlight cutting through at precise angles. Jedi of various species, and Peter's brain was still processing that aliens were real and everywhere. Moved with purpose, their robes swishing. Several paused to stare at him. And Peter heard whispered conversations in languages his ears couldn't parse. His spider sense had settled into that persistent background hum. Not comfortable, exactly, but not screaming danger either. It was like walking through a building where every person was armed but disciplined. Potential threat everywhere, but no immediate intent. They ascended a turbo lift, because of course it was called a turbo lift, and Peter's ears popped as they rose. When the doors opened, they faced a circular chamber with windows offering a panoramic view of Coruscant's endless cityscape. 12 chairs arranged in a circle, and in those chairs, Peter had fought alongside Thor. He'd met Dr. Strange. He'd seen things that would make most people question reality. But standing before the Jedi Council still made him feel like a kid called to the principal's office. The beings in those chairs represented species he couldn't name. A small green creature with pointed ears sat in the chair directly across from the entrance, ancient eyes studying Peter with unsettling focus. A dark-skinned man with a shaved head and an air of absolute authority occupied another seat. A woman with a cone-shaped headdress and a serene expression. A being whose entire head was a mass of tentacles. Masters, Anakin said, bowing. Ahsoka followed suit. Peter, uncertain, gave an awkward wave. Anakin Skywalker. The small green being spoke, his voice gravelly and weighted with years. Explain, you will. Why brought a stranger into the temple you have? Dangerous times these are. Master Yoda. Anakin straightened. This being fell from the sky above Senate District 4 approximately 30 minutes ago. He demonstrates abilities consistent with force sensitivity, precognitive reflexes, enhanced physicality, but claims no knowledge of the Force or the Jedi. He calls himself Spider-Man, says he's from a place called Earth, and arrived through what sounds like a spatial anomaly. The bald man, whose presence made Peter's spider sense hum louder, leaned forward. Spider-Man, an unusual designation. I am Mace Windu, master of this council. You claim to have no knowledge of the Force, yet you demonstrate precognition. Explain. Peter swallowed hard. 12 pairs of eyes. Well, multiple pairs of whatever optical organs these beings possessed, focused on him with uncomfortable intensity. I'm not from around here, like really not from around here. Where I'm from, there's no Force or Jedi or aliens or any of this. Just Earth. One planet, mostly normal humans, and a few enhanced individuals like me. He touched his chest. I got my powers from a radioactive spider bite. It changed my DNA, gave me abilities. The spider sense is just part of that package. It tingles when danger's coming. Radioactive spider, Yoda murmured. Altered DNA through mutation. From unknown regions, perhaps, or beyond. I'm from another dimension, Peter said, and the words felt absurd even as he spoke them. I was fighting a villain. There was this tech that warped space, and suddenly I was falling through your atmosphere. I need to get home. My aunt. People depend on me. Can you help? The council members exchanged glances, and Peter caught fragments of silent communication he couldn't interpret. Mace Windu stood, descending from his chair with measured steps. Your abilities bear examination. Ahsoka, take our guest to the medical bay. We'll need tissue samples, blood work, midi-chlorian count. Midi-chlorian what now? Peter asked. Microscopic organisms that live in our cells. Ahsoka explained quietly. They let us connect to the Force. Everyone has some. But Jedi have higher concentrations. The medical examination took an hour. A medical droid, because of course there were medical droids, extracted blood samples while a Jedi healer named Vokara Che scanned him with devices that hummed and beeped in concerning ways. Peter kept his mask on, unwilling to expose his identity even here. If he'd learned anything from being Spider-Man, it was that anonymity was survival. Fascinating, Vokara murmured, studying a holographic display. His cellular structure is definitely humanoid, but with significant augmentation. Enhanced muscle density, altered neural pathways, adhesive properties in his epidermis. I've never seen anything like it. And his midi-chlorian count. She paused. It's within normal range, not Force-sensitive by our standards. But his danger sense, Ahsoka started, is something else entirely. A biological precognitive ability unrelated to Force sensitivity. Vokara looked at Peter with renewed interest. You're a genuine anomaly, Spider-Man. Your powers exist outside the Force. That shouldn't be possible. But here you are. When they returned to the council chamber, the atmosphere had shifted, more tense. Peter's spider sense kicked up a notch as Mace Windu delivered the verdict. The council has deliberated. You are not a separatist spy. Your biology confirms you're not from this galaxy. You pose no immediate threat to the Republic. However, your abilities and origins make you a person of significant interest. His gaze hardened. The Chancellor's office has already made inquiries. They're aware of your arrival and requesting an audience. The Chancellor? Peter asked. Supreme Chancellor Palpatine, Anakin explained. He's the elected leader of the Galactic Republic. During wartime, his authority is extensive. Peter's spider sense spiked sharply, and he couldn't explain why. The name meant nothing to him. The position sounded political, not dangerous. Yet something in his hindbrain was screaming caution. We can offer you sanctuary in the temple, Mace continued. Protection while we research dimensional anomalies and potential methods of return. But make no mistake. You've arrived in a galaxy at war. The Separatist Alliance seeks to destroy the Republic. If they learn of your abilities, they'll hunt you as a potential weapon. Weapon? Peter's fists clenched. I'm not a weapon. I'm a hero. Where I come from, I save people. That's what I do. Yoda's ears perked up. A hero, you say? Much conflict this galaxy holds. Many innocents in need of saving. If help us you wish, welcomed you would be. Peter looked around the circle of faces, alien, human, and everything in between. These were the good guys, right? Peacekeepers, protectors, basically space cops with laser swords and magic powers. They were offering help, safety, and a chance to find a way home. So why wouldn't his spider sense shut up? I need time to think, Peter said finally. This is a lot. Everything here is a lot. Understandable, Mace said. Ahsoka, show our guest to temporary quarters. Spider-Man, you're free to move within the temple, but for your own safety, don't leave the grounds. Coruscant can be dangerous for those unfamiliar with its complexities. As Ahsoka led him away, Peter caught Anakin and Mace in quiet conversation, their voices too low to hear. But he didn't need super hearing to read body language. They were worried. About him, about what his presence meant, and somewhere in the back of his mind, that spider sense kept humming its wordless warning. Something in this temple, this beautiful, ancient place of wisdom and light, wasn't what it seemed. The quarters they assigned Peter were sparse but functional. A small room with a sleeping platform, a view screen showing Coruscant's endless cityscape, and a refresher unit he'd needed Ahsoka to explain how to operate. She'd left him with a datapad containing basic galactic information and a promise that someone would bring him food shortly. Peter sat on the edge of the sleeping platform, mask finally off, running his hands through his sweat-dampened hair. His web shooters sat disassembled on the desk beside him. 19 shots left, maybe 18 if one cartridge was running low. He needed to find materials, figure out the chemistry of this place, synthesize new fluid. The problem was that every chemical compound he'd memorized was Earth-based. Who knew if the elements here even had the same properties? A soft chime at the door interrupted his thoughts. Peter quickly pulled his mask back on, old habits, and called out, "It's open." The door slid aside with a pneumatic hiss, and a protocol droid entered carrying a tray. "Master Spider-Man, I am C-3PO, Human-Cyborg Relations. I've been assigned to assist with your acclimatization to the temple. I must say, in all my years of service, I've never encountered a species quite like yours." Oh my, is that a mask? How peculiar. Though I suppose no more peculiar than Kel Dor requiring breathing apparatus. "Thanks," Peter interrupted, taking the tray. The food looked mostly edible. Some kind of grain, roasted meat from an animal he'd rather not identify, and a purple vegetable that glowed faintly. "Do you know when the Council wants to see me again?" "Oh, well, as to that, Master Spider-Man, the Council is quite busy with the war effort. Master Windu and Master Yoda are currently in communication with the Chancellor's office regarding your status. There seems to be some disagreement about jurisdiction, you see. The Jedi Order maintains that as you arrived on Coruscant and demonstrated Force-adjacent abilities, you fall under Temple authority. However, the Chancellor's office argues that as an unknown entity during wartime, you represent a Republic security matter requiring Senate oversight." "C-3PO," Peter said gently. "I appreciate the information, but maybe the summarized version?" "Oh, of course. Apologies, sir. I do tend to ramble. The short version: important people are arguing about what to do with you." "Great. Peter set the tray aside, appetite gone. And what happens if the Chancellor wins the argument? I suppose you'd be transferred to Republic custody, likely to a secure facility for further evaluation. Though I'm certain the Chancellor would ensure your comfort. Supreme Chancellor Palpatine is known for his wisdom and... Peter's spider sense flared so hard, he nearly fell off the sleeping platform. The sensation was like ice water down his spine, every nerve screaming danger, even though C-3PO stood there harmlessly, still chattering about Palpatine's political acumen. Really quite remarkable how he's managed to maintain unity during such turbulent... Are you quite all right, sir? You appear distressed. Fine, Peter gasped, forcing himself to breathe. Just adjusting to everything. This Palpatine guy, what's his deal? Oh, the Supreme Chancellor is quite beloved. Elected from Naboo, served admirably during the Separatist crisis, granted emergency powers by the Senate to prosecute the war more effectively. A grandfatherly figure, really. Master Skywalker speaks highly of him. They're quite close, actually. The ice water feeling didn't fade. Peter's hands were shaking slightly, and he clenched them into fists to hide it. His spider sense had never been wrong. Not about the Green Goblin, not about Doc Ock, not about any of the threats he'd faced. And right now, it was screaming that Chancellor Palpatine was dangerous. But why? The guy was a politician, an elected leader during wartime. Beloved, according to C-3PO. Close with Anakin, who seemed like a genuinely good person. Unless... Peter thought about Norman Osborn. Respected businessman, philanthropist, friend of his family. Right up until the moment the Goblin formula had revealed what he'd been hiding underneath. C-3PO, does the temple have a library or archives? Somewhere I could research dimensional travel, spatial anomalies, that kind of thing. Oh yes, the Jedi archives are quite extensive. The most comprehensive collection of knowledge in the galaxy. Though I'm not certain you'd be permitted access without Council approval. Security protocols, you understand. A knock at the door. Actual knuckles on metal, not a chime. Peter's spider sense pinged, but not with the intensity it had around Palpatine's name. Come in. Anakin entered, looking tired. His robes were dusty, and Peter noticed fresh scratches on his mechanical hand. Sorry to interrupt. Thought I'd check on you before I clean up. The council meeting ran long. C-3PO straightened. Master Skywalker, I was just explaining to Master Spider-Man about the archives. I'll leave you to your discussion. Do call if you need anything. The droid shuffled out, still talking to himself about proper nutrition for unknown species. Anakin waited until the door closed before speaking. The Chancellor wants to meet you tomorrow morning. He's very interested in your arrival. Called it fortuitous timing given the war's current state. Peter's spider sense hummed. And what do you think? Anakin moved to the window, staring out at the city. I think that you fell out of the sky with abilities that could change the course of battles. I think the Separatists would love to capture you, study you, maybe replicate your powers. And I think that makes you valuable to people who see the war as a game of assets and leverage. He turned back to Peter. But I also think you're a kid who's scared and far from home. So I'm going to ask you straight. Are you a danger to the Republic? No, Peter said immediately. I help people. That's what I do. It's all I've ever done. Then why do you keep your face covered? The question caught Peter off guard. He reached up, touching the mask. Where I'm from, secret identities protect the people we love. If villains knew who I really was, they'd target my family, my friends. The mask isn't about hiding. It's about keeping them safe. Anakin nodded slowly. The Jedi don't do secret identities. We're public servants, accountable to the people we protect. But I understand the principle. He crossed the room, lowering his voice. Peter, that is your real name, isn't it? Peter's breath caught. How did you... You mumbled it during the medical scan when the droid pricked your finger. Don't worry, I didn't tell anyone. Anakin's expression softened. Look, the situation you're in is complicated. The Chancellor is powerful, and when he wants something, he usually gets it. But the Jedi answer to a higher authority, the Force itself. If you're in danger, we protect you. That's not negotiable. Even from the Chancellor? Something flickered across Anakin's face. Conflict, maybe, or concern. The Chancellor is a good man. I've known him since I was 9 years old. He's been a mentor, a friend. But... He paused, seeming to wrestle with something. The war has changed things. Changed people. The Senate grants him more power every month. And the Jedi Council worries about overreach. There's tension. Peter's spider sense pulsed again at the mention of Palpatine, and he made a decision. Anakin, I need to tell you something. And I know it's going to sound crazy, but please hear me out. Go ahead. My spider sense, the danger warning I have, it's been going off constantly since I got here. Not strongly, just this background noise, like standing in a room full of armed people. I figured it was because everything here is strange and potentially threatening. He met Anakin's eyes through the mask. But when C-3PO mentioned the Chancellor's name, my spider sense went nuclear, like standing next to a bomb, and I don't know why. Anakin's expression hardened. That's a serious accusation. It's not an accusation. It's just what my body's telling me. And back home, my spider sense has saved my life hundreds of times. It's never been wrong. Peter stood, moving closer. I'm not saying your Chancellor is evil or anything. Maybe he's just, I don't know, stressed, giving off bad vibes. But something about him sets off every alarm I have. Anakin was quiet for a long moment, staring at his mechanical hand. When he spoke, his voice was careful. The Jedi have sensed nothing wrong with Chancellor Palpatine. Master Yoda himself has worked closely with him for years. If there was darkness there, the Council would know. Would they? Peter pressed. You said the Force binds everything together, right? What if someone could hide in plain sight, use the Force to mask themselves? That would require... Anakin trailed off, his expression troubled. That would require mastery of the dark side far beyond anything we've seen in generations. The Sith are extinct, Peter. They've been gone for 1,000 years. Sith? Dark side users. The Jedi's ancient enemies. They wielded the Force for selfish gain, for power and domination. The last Sith Lord was destroyed centuries ago. But Anakin's voice lacked conviction, and Peter's spider sense caught the lie. Not from Anakin, but woven into the very statement itself. You don't believe that, Peter said quietly. Anakin's jaw tightened. 10 years ago, my master Qui-Gon Jinn was killed by a Sith Lord on Naboo. The Council confirmed it. The Sith had returned. Since then, we've been searching for the second one. Sith always work in pairs, master and apprentice. We found the apprentice, Count Dooku, leader of the Separatist movement. But the master... He looked up, and Peter saw genuine fear in those blue eyes. The Sith Master is still out there, hidden, manipulating the war from the shadows, and we can't find him. Peter's blood ran cold. What if you're not looking in the right places? Don't. Anakin's voice was sharp. Don't go there. Chancellor Palpatine is not a Sith Lord. He's a politician who's done everything in his power to preserve the Republic. He stopped, shaking his head. This is the war talking, the stress. Everyone's paranoid, seeing enemies everywhere. Your spider sense is probably reacting to the dark side energy on Coruscant. There's so much death, so much conflict, it permeates everything. But Peter watched Anakin's hand clench and unclench, watched the way his eyes kept darting away, and recognized the signs of someone trying to convince himself of something he didn't quite believe. "What if I'm right?" Peter asked. "What if your Chancellor is the Sith Master you've been looking for?" "Then the galaxy is doomed," Anakin said flatly. "Because he controls the Senate, commands the loyalty of the clone army, and has the trust of nearly every system in the Republic. If Palpatine fell tomorrow, the government would collapse. The Separatists would win. Billions would die." He moved toward the door, his posture rigid. "Get some rest, Peter. Tomorrow you'll meet the Chancellor and you'll see that your spider sense is wrong. It has to be." The door slid shut behind him, leaving Peter alone with his racing thoughts and the persistent, nagging certainty that he'd just stumbled into something far more dangerous than a simple war between Republic and Separatists. He picked up the datapad Ahsoka had left, scrolling through information about galactic history. The Clone Wars, the Separatist crisis, the emergency powers granted to the Chancellor, the Jedi serving as generals stretched thin across 1,000 battlefields. And nowhere in the official histories did he find any mention of manipulation, of someone orchestrating events, of a patient predator weaving a web across the galaxy. But Peter knew webs. He'd been spinning them for years, and he recognized the pattern when he saw it. Somewhere in this gleaming city of 1 trillion souls, a spider far more venomous than anything radioactive sat at the center of a galactic web. And tomorrow morning, Peter was going to walk right into its parlor. His spider sense thrummed agreement, a warning wrapped in certainty. He had 19 web shots, no allies who'd believe him, and less than 12 hours before he'd meet the most dangerous being in this galaxy face to face. Peter pulled his mask off again, staring at his reflection in the dark window. Behind him, Coruscant sparkled with 1 billion lights, beautiful and terrible and utterly alien. "With great power comes great responsibility," he whispered to his reflection. "Even here, even now. Especially now." The Senate building made the Jedi Temple look modest. Peter stood in an antechamber dressed in borrowed robes. The temple had insisted his unusual attire might be seen as hostile by Senate security, and tried not to fidget. His spider suit was hidden underneath, mask tucked in a pocket. His web shooters were strapped to his forearms under the flowing sleeves. 18 shots, maybe 17. Mace Windu stood beside him, arms crossed, expression unreadable. "When addressing the Supreme Chancellor, you will show respect. He is the elected leader of 1 trillion citizens. Whatever your spider sense tells you, you will remain calm and courteous. Understood?" "Understood," Peter said, though his spider sense had been screaming since they'd entered the building. Not the low hum from the temple. This was a wail, a siren, every nerve in his body insisting he should run. "Master Windu, has the Council ever considered that maybe the Sith Master isn't hiding on some remote planet? That maybe he's here on Coruscant?" Mace's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. "The Council has considered many possibilities. We have searched the Senate, the military, every major institution. We've found nothing. Dark side users create ripples in the Force, disturbances that trained Jedi can sense. Chancellor Palpatine has been tested by proximity to the Council for over a decade. He is clean. What if he's just that good at hiding? Then he would be the most powerful Force user in galactic history, Mace said flatly. And if such a being existed, the Force itself would rebel against that level of deception. The light and dark are meant to be balanced. A Sith powerful enough to hide from the entire Jedi Order while orchestrating a galactic war would be... He paused. An impossibility. The door slid open before Peter could respond. A thin man in crimson robes, some kind of administrative assistant, bowed slightly. "Masters, the Supreme Chancellor will see you now." They walked through corridors lined with art from 1,000 worlds. Sculptures, paintings, tapestries, each one probably worth more than Peter's entire apartment building. Senate guards in blue armor stood at intervals, their expressions hidden behind visors. Peter's spider sense pinged off each one, not strongly, just acknowledging they were armed and trained. But as they approached the Chancellor's office, the sensation grew. Like walking into a furnace. Like approaching something that wore humanoid shape but was fundamentally wrong underneath. The doors opened. The office was surprisingly understated. Large windows overlooking Coruscant, a simple desk, chairs arranged for conversation rather than intimidation. And behind the desk, rising with a warm smile, was Supreme Chancellor Palpatine. He looked like someone's grandfather. White hair, lined face, slightly hunched posture that suggested age and wisdom. His robes were elegant, but not ostentatious. Dark red and black, befitting his station. When he spoke, his voice carried gentle authority. "Master Windu, how good of you to come. And you must be the mysterious Spider-Man." Palpatine moved around the desk with slow, careful steps, like someone whose bones ached. "Please sit. Can I offer refreshments? I have Nabooian tea or perhaps something more substantial." "We're fine, Chancellor," Mace said, remaining standing. Peter followed his lead, every muscle tense. Palpatine's smile didn't fade, but Peter caught something in those eyes. A flicker of calculation, there and gone in an instant. The old man settled into his chair with a slight wince. Of course. I imagine young Spider-Man is eager to return to his world. Such a tragedy being torn from one's home." He leaned forward, steepling his fingers. "Tell me, my boy, what is this Earth like? The Jedi report you come from a dimension without the Force, without our technology. It must seem quite primitive to you here." The comment was phrased as sympathy, but Peter heard the probe underneath, testing him, seeing how he'd react. "Actually, sir, your galaxy seems pretty advanced compared to Earth. We're still working on interstellar travel, and we definitely don't have the Force or lightsabers." "Fascinating. And yet you possess abilities that rival trained Jedi Knights. Superhuman strength, precognitive reflexes, the capacity to adhere to surfaces." Palpatine's eyes gleamed with interest. "The medical reports are quite extraordinary. A radioactive spider, they said? Such a bizarre origin for such remarkable power." Peter's spider sense was howling. Behind the grandfatherly facade, behind the political smile, something ancient and hungry was watching him, evaluating him. He'd felt this before, with the Vulture, with Mysterio, the sensation of being sized up as a threat or a tool. "Chancellor," Mace interjected, "Spider-Man has agreed to remain at the temple while we research methods for his return. The Jedi archives contain extensive records of dimensional phenomena. Given time, we believe we can... But time is something we have precious little of, Master Windu." Palpatine's tone remained pleasant, but steel entered his voice. "The war continues to escalate. Just yesterday, the Separatists attacked the Kaleida Nebula Medical Station. 400 Republic personnel dead. And our intelligence suggests a major offensive is being planned against the inner Rim worlds." He turned back to Peter. In such times, one must consider every resource, every potential advantage. Your abilities could save countless lives. I help people, Peter said carefully. That's what I do. But I don't know anything about your war, your politics, who's right or wrong. Then allow me to explain. Palpatine rose again, moving to the window. His posture changed subtly, less hunched, more commanding. 10 years ago, former Jedi Master Count Dooku allied himself with mega-corporations and corrupt planets to secede from the Republic. They claim we're inefficient, corrupt, strangling commerce with regulations. In truth, they simply want freedom to exploit the weak without oversight. They've built a droid army of trillions, and they won't stop until every free world is under their control. Peter glanced at Mace, whose expression remained neutral. No contradiction, no disagreement. Was the story true? Or was this just one side of a complicated conflict? The Jedi serve the Republic, Mace said. We fight to protect innocents caught between armies. If you chose to help Spider-Man, you'd be saving lives. Clone troopers, civilians, entire worlds. Clone troopers, Peter repeated. You keep mentioning them. What exactly are? Soldiers grown from a template, Palpatine said smoothly. Created to serve the Republic, to fight battles that would otherwise cost civilian lives. They're the finest warriors in the galaxy, loyal, skilled, utterly dedicated to their purpose. Something about the phrasing made Peter's stomach turn. Grown, created to serve. Are they people? Do they have rights, choices? Palpatine's smile never wavered. They are property of the Republic, though of course we treat them with the respect due to valuable assets. Their purpose gives them meaning, young man. Without the war, they would have no reason to exist. Peter's hands clenched inside his borrowed robes. He thought about the Vulture's crew, desperate men driven to crime by economic collapse. He thought about the people in Queens who'd lost jobs, homes, hope, and how easy it was for the powerful to dismiss them as valuable assets rather than human beings. With respect, Chancellor, that sounds wrong. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Mace stiffened. Palpatine's smile remained, but his eyes went cold, not angry, just empty, like staring into a void wearing a human mask. Wrong? Palpatine's voice stayed gentle. My dear boy, I admire your moral clarity. Truly I do. But you must understand, you come from a small world, a single planet. Our galaxy contains trillions of beings, thousands of species, conflicts spanning millennia. Morality on such a scale requires flexibility, pragmatism. Uncle Ben used to say that compromise is how you lose yourself one piece at a time, Peter said quietly. And that great power comes with great responsibility. If the clones are people, and they sound like people to me, then treating them as property is wrong, even if it's convenient. For just a heartbeat, the mask slipped. Peter saw something in Palpatine's face that made his spider sense spike so hard he nearly vomited. Rage, ancient and bottomless, constrained only by patience and control. Then it was gone, replaced by that grandfatherly concern. How idealistic. The Jedi could learn from such pure conviction. Palpatine returned to his desk, settling into his chair. Master Windu, I'm afraid I must insist that Spider-Man be placed under joint Jedi Senate oversight. His abilities make him too valuable and too dangerous to be monitored by a single institution. I'll draft the executive order this afternoon. The Council will oppose this, Mace said, his voice hard. The Council does not have final authority in matters of Republic security, Palpatine replied, still smiling. I respect the Jedi Order, Master Windu, but I am Supreme Chancellor, In wartime, certain decisions fall to civilian leadership. Surely you understand. Peter watched the power play unfold, recognizing the pattern. This wasn't about his abilities or Republic security. This was Palpatine establishing dominance, reminding the Jedi that he held ultimate authority. And the way Mace's jaw tightened suggested this wasn't the first time they'd had this conversation. Spider-Man will remain at the temple until the Council decides otherwise, Mace said finally. You may draft whatever orders you wish, Chancellor. But the Jedi answer to the Force before any temporal authority. Palpatine's smile widened, showing too many teeth. Of course, Master Windu. I would expect nothing less, though I do hope the Council will reconsider. After all, we're on the same side. We all want to protect the Republic, to end this terrible war, to bring peace and security to the galaxy. His gaze shifted to Peter. And I'm certain young Spider-Man wants to help save lives. Don't you, my boy? The question hung in the air, loaded with unspoken threat. Peter felt like a fly noticing the web too late, sticky strands already clinging to his limbs. I want to go home, Peter said, voice steady despite the fear. And yeah, I help people. But I choose who I help and how. Nobody owns me. Not the Jedi, not the Republic, and definitely not you. Silence. Even Mace looked surprised at Peter's bluntness. Palpatine's expression didn't change, but Peter felt the temperature drop another degree. Admirable independence, Palpatine said softly. Though I wonder how long you can maintain it, so far from home, with so few allies. The galaxy can be quite hostile to those who stand alone. He's not alone, Mace said, and the words carried the weight of a vow. The Jedi protect those who cannot protect themselves. That includes confused teenagers from other dimensions. Even when those teenagers insult the Supreme Chancellor? Palpatine's tone remained pleasant, but Peter heard the poison underneath. Even then. Palpatine nodded slowly, as if confirming something to himself. Very well. Spider-Man may remain at the temple, for now. But Master Windu, do remember that the Jedi Order exists at the Senate's pleasure. Your funding, your authority, your very right to carry lightsabers in public, all granted by the Republic you serve. It would be unfortunate if political realities forced me to reconsider that relationship. Is that a threat, Chancellor? Merely an observation. Palpatine stood, effectively dismissing them. Thank you for bringing our guest to meet me. I look forward to speaking with Spider-Man again once he's had time to consider the complexities of our situation. Perhaps when he's less influenced by Jedi dogma. The walk back to the speeder was silent. Peter's hands were shaking, and he shoved them in his pockets to hide it. Once they were sealed in the vehicle, and Mace had activated a privacy field, the Jedi Master spoke. That was reckless. He's the Sith Master, Peter said, the words spilling out. I don't know how I know, but I know. Everything about him is wrong. The way he talks, the way he looks at people. He's wearing that face like a mask. Underneath is something else, something dark. Mace's hands tightened on the controls. You realize what you're accusing? If you're wrong, I'm not wrong. My spider sense has never been wrong. Peter pulled his mask from his pocket, staring at the red and blue fabric. Back home, I fought people who hid behind respectable facades. Norman Osborn was a billionaire philanthropist until he put on a goblin mask and tried to kill me. I know what monsters look like when they pretend to be human. The Council has been watching Palpatine for years. Then he's been fooling you for years. Peter met Mace's eyes. You said a Sith powerful enough to hide from the Jedi would be impossible. What if impossible isn't impossible? What if he's just that patient, that skilled, that Evil? Mace was quiet for a long moment as the speeder navigated Coruscant's traffic. Finally, he spoke. If you're right, and I'm not saying you are, then the Republic is already lost. Palpatine has been consolidating power since the war began. The Senate votes him emergency authorities every month. The clone army answers to him directly. If he's a Sith Lord playing the role of concerned politician, he trailed off, looking older suddenly. Then we've already lost. Not yet, Peter said. He doesn't know I can sense him. He thinks I'm just a confused kid with weird powers. That's an advantage. An advantage? Mace looked at him sharply. Spider-Man. If Palpatine is what you claim, he's the most dangerous being in the galaxy. You're a teenager with limited resources and no knowledge of this universe. What exactly do you think you can do? Peter pulled on his mask, feeling the familiar comfort of the fabric against his skin. When he spoke, his voice was Spider-Man's. Confident, determined, touched with humor despite the fear. I'm going to do what I always do, Master Windu. I'm going to help people. I'm going to protect innocents. And I'm going to stop the bad guy, even if nobody believes me, even if it seems impossible, even if I have to do it alone. He looked out at the temple approaching in the distance, its spires catching the afternoon light. Because with great power comes great responsibility. And that spider that bit me, it gave me a lot of power. Mace was silent, but Peter saw something shift in the Jedi Master's expression. Not belief, exactly, but maybe the beginning of doubt. And in a galaxy-spanning web of deception, doubt was the first thread that needed pulling. The Council meets tonight, Mace said finally. I'll present your concerns. Don't expect them to believe you, but I'll present them. That's all I'm asking. As they descended toward the temple landing platform, Peter's spider sense finally began to quiet. Not gone, never gone, not in this galaxy at war, but manageable. He was back in Jedi territory, surrounded by people who, whatever their flaws, genuinely tried to protect others. But tomorrow, or the next day, or the day after that, he'd have to face Palpatine again. And next time, the Chancellor wouldn't be so pleasant. Next time, the mask would slip further, and Peter would see the monster underneath. He had 18 web shots, no way home, and the most powerful being in the galaxy now knew he existed. Spider-Man had faced worse odds before. At least, he hoped he had. The room assigned to him felt less like sanctuary, and more like a cage the next morning. Peter had spent the night hunched over the datapad, devouring everything he could about the Clone Wars. The more he learned, the sicker he felt. The scale was incomprehensible. Battles involving millions of droids, entire planets glassed by orbital bombardment, refugee crises that dwarfed anything Earth had ever seen. And at the center of it all, the clone army, property of the Republic, grown, not born, engineered for obedience. He couldn't shake Palpatine's words, or the Chancellor's cold, empty eyes when he'd said them. The Jedi argued the clones were necessary. A volunteer army would have been crushed in the war's opening days. But was necessity a good enough reason? Peter remembered the Sokovia Accords, the arguments about registration and oversight. He'd chosen his side then, and the principle felt the same now. You don't treat people like tools, not ever. A knock at the door was followed by Ahsoka's voice. Spider-Man, you decent? We've got a situation. Peter opened the door. Ahsoka stood there, arms crossed, looking more like an annoyed older sister than a mystical warrior. What kind of situation? The fun kind. Come on, Master Skywalker's waiting. She led him not to the council chambers or the archives, but downward, deep into the temple's foundations. The air grew cooler, the architecture shifting from polished stone to more utilitarian corridors. They entered a large hangar bay where the hum of engines and the smell of fuel oil replaced the temple's usual scent of incense and old stone. Anakin stood beside a sleek, angular gunship, its sides painted with blue Republic markings. A group of clone troopers in white and blue armor were checking its systems. Peter's spider sense gave a low, respectful ping. Competent, disciplined, potentially dangerous, but no immediate threat. "Spider-Man," Anakin said, his expression unreadable. "We've been ordered to Rexus Secundus. Separatist forces are massing for an assault on a Republic refinery. Intelligence suggests they're testing a new shielding technology for their droids. We're to disrupt the operation, gather data, and retreat." Peter blinked. "Okay. And why are you telling me?" "Because you're coming with us." "What?" Peter and Ahsoka said in unison. Ahsoka recovered first. "Master, the Council hasn't cleared him for—" "The Council isn't in charge of this mission." Anakin cut her off, his voice tight. Chancellor Palpatine issued a direct request. Spider-Man's unique physical profile and apparent immunity to conventional sensors make him ideal for covert reconnaissance. The request was framed as an opportunity for him to contribute, to see the reality of the war. Peter's spider sense, which had settled to a background hum, spiked sharply. A test, or a trap. "And if I say no?" Anakin met his eyes, and for the first time, Peter saw genuine conflict there. The loyal Jedi Knight warring with the man who'd promised him protection. It wasn't presented as optional. The Chancellor's request carries the weight of a military order. Refusing would complicate your status. And the temples. The unspoken words hung in the air. "Do this, or you become Palpatine's prisoner." Peter looked past Anakin at the clones. They moved with a synchronized efficiency that was almost beautiful and deeply unnerving. One of them, his helmet tucked under his arm, caught Peter's gaze and gave a slight, professional nod. He looked young. They all did. "Fine," Peter said, the word tasting like ash. "But I'm not taking orders. I'm helping. There's a difference." Anakin's shoulders relaxed a fraction. "Understood. Gear up. We leave in 10. The gear was a standard-issue Republic bodysuit in dark gray, designed to go under armor. Peter pulled it on over his spider suit, keeping his mask and web shooters accessible. He was given a comlink, a breathing mask for toxic atmospheres, and a pair of macro binoculars. No weapons. He didn't ask for any. The gunship, a laddie, Ahsoka called it, was louder than any Quinjet he'd ever been in. The clones, a unit designated the 501st, strapped in with practiced ease. Peter took a seat between Ahsoka and the helmetless clone who'd nodded at him earlier. "CT-7567, the clone said, offering a hand, "but my brothers call me Rex." "Spider-Man," Peter said, shaking it. Rex's grip was firm, his eyes sharp and intelligent. "So you're all clones?" "That's right. Proud to serve the Republic." The answer was automatic, polished. But Peter saw the way Rex's eyes flicked to Anakin, a flicker of something deeper than programmed loyalty. The gunship lurched, and then they were screaming up through Coruscant's traffic lanes and into the blackness of space. A Republic cruiser, a massive wedge-shaped vessel, hung in orbit. Their LAATI docked in its bustling hangar bay, and they were transferred to a smaller, longer-range shuttle for the hyperspace jump. Peter watched through the viewport as the stars stretched into streaks of light. Hyperspace. Actual faster-than-light travel. Part of his brain, the science geek part that had built web shooters in his bedroom, was screaming in joy. The rest of him was coiled tight. Spider sense whispering that every step deeper into this war was a step into Palpatine's design. The journey was short. As the shuttle reverted to real space, Rexus Secundus filled the viewport, a brown, polluted world wreathed in industrial smog. Separatist-held world, Rex explained, handing Peter a datapad with a tactical map. Heavy droid foundries, refineries for starship fuel. Our target is this facility here, on the edge of the Javan Scar. Intel says they're retrofitting B-2 super battle droids with a new energy shield, something that can deflect blaster fire and even lightsabers for a short time. Our job is to get in, get a shield generator sample and the schematics, and get out. Minimal engagement. Minimal engagement with a whole separatist factory? Peter asked. That's why you're here, Anakin said, joining them. He changed into his armor, his lightsaber prominent on his belt. Scans show a network of exhaust conduits and maintenance shafts running under the main complex. Too small for clones, even for us in full gear. But for someone who can stick to walls and fit into tight spaces, Peter understood. He was the canary in the coal mine, or the spider in the pipes. The shuttle descended through acidic clouds, flying nap of the earth to avoid detection. They set down in a rocky canyon, 5 clicks from the target. The air that hit Peter when the ramp lowered was thick with chemical fumes. His enhanced senses recoiled at the stench of sulfur and ozone. Ahsoka, Rex, you're with me on perimeter security, Anakin ordered. Spider-Man, you have the schematics. The main vent intake is 500 meters north, marked by a triple-stack cooling tower. Get in. Follow the primary conduit to the central data hub. Download everything, grab a physical sample if you can, and get back. We'll be here for 40 minutes. After that, we're compromised and we leave. What if I'm not back? Anakin's face was grim. Then we assume you're captured or dead and we follow protocol. Charming. Peter gave a thumbs up he didn't feel and melted into the rust-colored landscape. Moving across the broken terrain was easy. His agility let him leap crevices and scramble up rock faces that would have required ropes for anyone else. He found the cooling towers, 3 massive cylinders belching greenish steam. At their base, partly concealed by scrub, was a grated opening large enough for him to crawl through. The inside was a different world, a maze of hot, echoing metal ducts, lit only by the faint glow of maintenance strips. The heat was intense, and the air was barely breathable. Peter pulled on his breathing mask and activated the night vision setting on his borrowed macro binoculars. Green-tinted schematics overlaid his vision, guiding him. His spider sense stayed quiet, only pulsing gently to warn him of shifting hot spots or unstable grading. This was a place of machines, not living beings. He moved silently, his wall crawling letting him navigate vertical shafts and inverted corridors with ease. After 10 minutes of creeping, he dropped into a wider chamber, a data hub. Consoles lined the walls, their screens displaying scrolling streams of data in a language he couldn't read. In the center of the room, on a pedestal, sat a hexagonal device about the size of a football, glowing with a soft blue energy field. The shield generator. Jackpot, he whispered. He plugged a data spike from his kit into the nearest console. The download bar began to fill sluggishly. While it worked, he approached the generator. The energy field crackled as he reached for it. He snatched his hand back. Right. Shield. Thinking quickly, he found an insulated toolkit near one of the consoles. Using a pair of ceramic pliers, he carefully deactivated the device. The blue field died, and he lifted it. It was heavier than it looked. The download completed with a soft chime. Peter pocketed the data spike and generator and turned to leave. A red light began to flash on the console he'd just used. A silent alarm. Oh crap. His spider sense erupted a second before the door to the chamber hissed open. Not battle droids. These were taller, sleeker, with sinister insectoid heads and wrist-mounted blasters. Commando droids. 4 of them fanned into the room, their photoreceptors scanning. Peter pressed himself against the ceiling, utterly still. One droid's head swiveled up. It let out a series of electronic clicks. All 4 blasters raised. Peter dropped. He landed in a crouch between 2 droids, webbing the blaster of one to the faceplate of another. Thwip, thwip. He surged forward, driving a palm heel strike into the chest of the third. His enhanced strength crumpled the durasteel plating, and the droid crashed into a console, sparking. The 4th fired. Peter's spider sense flared, and he twisted. The blaster bolt seared past his shoulder, close enough to smell the ozone. He shot a web line, yanking the droid off its feet and slamming it into the wall. The fight lasted less than 8 seconds. 4 advanced combat droids lay in sparking heaps. Peter was breathing heavily, adrenaline singing in his veins. He'd fought robots before, Dr. Octopus's arms, the Stark drones. But these were different. Cold, efficient, designed only to kill. Anakin's voice crackled in his comlink, tense. "Spider-Man, report. We're reading energy spikes in your sector." "Alarm tripped," Peter whispered. "I've got the goods, but they know I'm here. I'm on my way out." "Negative. Patrols are converging on your exit vector. New path. Follow my marker." A waypoint appeared on Peter's schematic, leading deeper into the complex, not out. "You want me to go further in?" "It's the only clear route. We'll create a diversion at the perimeter and meet you at extraction point Beta. Move." Peter moved. He shot a web to the ceiling and swung through the ducts, following the new path. Alarms were blaring now throughout the facility. He could hear the distant, rhythmic stomp of marching droids. The route led him to a vast manufacturing floor. Below him, assembly lines cranked out legions of B-1 battle droids. And among them, he saw them. Platoons of the upgraded B-2s, each with a bulky generator on their back, a shimmering energy shield encasing their front. His spider sense screamed a warning a half-second before a volley of blaster fire tore through, the grating above him. He dropped, landing on a conveyor belt carrying half-assembled droids. He was surrounded. Dozens of photoreceptors swiveled toward him. The upgraded B-2s at the front raised their arm cannons, their shields glowing brighter. Trapped in the heart of a droid factory, with 17 web shots left and an army between him and escape, Peter Parker did the only thing he could. He shot a web line to the ceiling, pulled himself up, and started to run. The factory floor was a symphony of automated destruction. Blaster bolts sizzled past Peter's head as he sprinted along the conveyor belt, leaping over half-formed droid torsos. His spider sense was a constant, piercing shriek, painting the paths of incoming fire in his mind's eye a millisecond before they arrived. He ducked, rolled, and twisted, bolts cratering the metal all around him. He couldn't fight them all. There were too many. His only chance was speed and chaos. Ahead, the conveyor fed into a massive hydraulic press. Peter didn't break stride. He fired a web line to a crane arm overhead, swinging over the press just as it slammed down with a deafening crunch. He landed on a gantry overlooking the main floor. The upgraded B-2s were herding him, their movements coordinated by some central tactical processor. Their shields overlapped, forming a glowing wall that advanced relentlessly. One of them fired its wrist rocket. Peter's spider sense flared, and he backflipped off the gantry. The rocket hit the railing, and the explosion sent shrapnel and smoke billowing. He fell, shooting a web to swing behind a pillar. The data spike and shield generator in his pockets felt impossibly heavy. "Think, Parker." His eyes scanned the factory. Vats of molten metal, high-voltage power conduits, robotic arms welding droid parts. This was a machine, and every machine had a weak point. Anakin's voice was tense in his comlink. "Spider-Man, we're engaged at the perimeter. We can't reach you. You need to get to the western exhaust manifold, level 3. It's a straight shot outside." "A little busy." Peter dodged another rocket, the concussion wave rattling his teeth. He scrambled up the pillar to the ceiling, clinging upside down. From here, he could see the layout. The central power distributor was a humming column in the middle of the room, feeding energy to the assembly lines and the shield generators on the B2s. The shields have to be powered from somewhere. He dropped onto the distributor column, ignoring the electrical buzz that made his hair stand on end. The B2s couldn't angle their shots up at him without hitting their own infrastructure. They halted, their photoreceptors tracking him. "Hey, tinheads!" Peter yelled, tapping the column. "Bet this is important, right?" He hauled back a fist and punched. His enhanced strength met reinforced durasteel plating with a resonant gong. It dented, but didn't break. The droids below shifted uneasily. He hit it again, and again. Cracks spiderwebbed across the plating. Warning lights flared across the factory floor. The droids made a decision. 2 of them lowered their shields, raised their other arms, and fired grappling cables. The metal hooks shot toward Peter. He dodged one, but the other wrapped around his ankle and yanked. He was ripped from the column and slammed into the floor below. The impact drove the breath from his lungs. Before he could rise, a heavy, metal foot pinned his chest. A B2 loomed over him, its arm cannon glowing, charging a point-blank shot. Peter's mind went cold and clear. 17 shots. He fired a web not at the droid, but at the ceiling directly above it. The second cartridge fired, a thicker, glob-like formulation. It hit the ceiling and expanded into a dense, sticky mass. He yanked down with all his strength. A heavy cable housing, torn free from its mounts, crashed down onto the B2. The droid crumpled, its shield flickering and dying. The weight lifted off Peter's chest. He rolled to his feet, gasping. The other droids were closing in, shields reactivated. But the downed B2 gave him an idea. Its shield generator was still intact, though cracked. He web-yanked it toward him, snatched it up, and with a grunt of effort, hurled it like a discus at the central power column. It struck the cracked plating and exploded in a shower of blue energy and shrapnel. The effect was instantaneous. A cascade of failing systems rippled outwards. Lights flickered. Assembly lines ground to a halt. The shields on the B2s wavered, their glow becoming unstable. "Now we're talking," Peter muttered. He didn't waste the opening. He became a blur of motion, no longer trying to damage the droids, but to disable them. A web to a joint to lock it. A yank on a power cable. A well-placed kick to an unstable shield generator, causing it to overload and blast the droid backwards. He was a pest, a glitch in their system, and he was exploiting it perfectly. But he was also tiring. The air was thin and toxic, his muscles burned, and the constant drain of his spider sense was giving him a pounding headache. He reached the western wall, spotting the rusted exhaust manifold Anakin mentioned. It was 20 feet up, a dark opening just large enough for him to crawl through. A new sound cut through the factory's din, the high-pitched whine of repulsor lifts. 3 floating droids with twin blaster cannons descended from a higher level. Droid gunships. "You have got to be kidding me." The gunships opened fire, their cannons shredding the gantries around the exhaust port. There was no cover. Peter pressed himself against the wall as bolts chewed the metal around him, getting closer. He had one shot. He aimed his web shooters not at the droids, but at the heavy, dormant exhaust fan above the manifold opening. He fired both remaining cartridges of his impact webbing, a special formula that expanded and hardened on contact. The webbing engulfed the fan. He pulled. With a shriek of tearing metal, the entire fan assembly came loose. It plummeted down, and Peter, using every ounce of his strength, swung it in a wide, desperate arc. It smashed into two of the gunships, sending them spinning into walls where they exploded. The third gunship veered away, then reoriented, its cannons charging. A green lightsaber blade erupted from the exhaust manifold, spearing the gunship through its core. It sparked and fell. Ahsoka Tano dropped down from the opening, her stance ready, a fierce grin on her face. "Need a lift?" "You have no idea," Peter gasped. Ahsoka leapt down, deflecting a few last stray blaster bolts from the disorganized droids. "The way's clear. Let's go." They scrambled up into the duct. It was a tight, claustrophobic climb upward for what felt like an eternity. Then a horizontal run. And finally, they burst out into the open air on a rocky ledge. The gunship was waiting, its engine screaming, rear ramp open. Rex was at the minigun, laying down suppressing fire into the canyon below where waves of battle droids were advancing. Anakin was at the ramp, his face tight with relief. "Move!" Peter and Ahsoka dove aboard. The ramp hissed shut, and the gunship shot skyward, blaster fire pinging harmlessly off its hull. Inside, the roar of the engines was deafening. For a long moment, no one spoke. Peter slumped against the bulkhead, pulling off his breathing mask and sucking in deep, clean breaths from the ship's air supply. He was covered in soot, grease, and minor burns. His hands shook with adrenaline crash. He pulled the data spike and the cracked shield generator from his pockets, holding them out. Rex took them, his helmet hiding his expression, but his nod was deeply respectful. "You did good, kid," the clone captain said. Anakin crouched in front of him. "You're hurt." "I'm fine," Peter said, his voice hoarse. "Just need a minute." He looked at Ahsoka, who was watching him with a new, assessing look. "Thanks for the save. Thanks for the distraction. We wouldn't have gotten out of the perimeter firefight if half their forces hadn't been called inside to deal with you." She shook her head. "I've never seen anyone move like that. Not even Master Skywalker." Anakin didn't disagree. He just studied Peter. "The Chancellor will be pleased. This data could turn the tide in several sectors." The words landed like a lead weight in Peter's gut. Pleased. That was the whole point, wasn't it? To make him useful. To tie him to the Republic war machine. He'd just proven he could be a very effective weapon. He looked at the clones around him. Rex and the others, their armor scored with fresh blaster marks. They were people. They'd fought beside him, covered his escape, and they were property. "What happens to the clones after the war?" Peter asked quietly. The question killed the post-mission relief in the cabin. The troopers went very still. Anakin's face clouded. Ahsoka looked away. "That's not something we need to think about now," Anakin said, his tone final. "The war isn't over." "But it will be," Peter pressed. "And then what? Do they get to retire? Have families? See the galaxy they saved?" "They serve the Republic," Anakin said. But the words lacked conviction. He stood and moved to the cockpit, ending the conversation. Rex was the one who answered, his voice modulated but quiet through his helmet. "We do our duty, Spider-Man. That's all we're meant for." Peter looked at the clone captain, then at his own soot-stained hands. He'd fought to retrieve a weapon today. He'd fought to survive. But he hadn't fought for the right reason. He'd been played. The gunship docked in the cruiser's hangar. As they disembarked, a protocol droid approached, its movements precise. "Master Skywalker, Captain Rex, the Supreme Chancellor commends you on the mission's success. He requests that Spider-Man and the acquired technology be transferred to a Republic science vessel for immediate analysis and debriefing." Anakin stiffened. "The technology, yes. Spider-Man returns to the Jedi Temple. He's under our protection." The Chancellor was most insistent, the droid said. He cited Republic Security Directive 7 Alpha. The being's unique biological and tactical profile is now a matter of utmost strategic importance. Peter's spider sense, which had finally begun to quiet, roared back to life. This was it. The trap snapped shut. Palpatine wasn't going to let him return to the temple. He was going into a lab. Anakin stepped between Peter and the droid, his hand resting on his lightsaber. Tell the Chancellor that Spider-Man is injured and requires Jedi medical attention. He will return to Coruscant with us. That is my final word as the ranking Jedi General. The standoff crackled in the hangar bay. Clone troopers glanced at each other, unsure. The protocol droid processed the refusal. I will relay your decision, the droid said, and turned away. Anakin watched it go, his jaw clenched. He turned to Peter, his voice low. We need to leave, now. As they hurried back to the shuttle, Rex fell into step beside Peter. He spoke quietly, his helmet turned forward so his voice was muffled. That was a brave thing you did in there, and a brave thing you asked. He paused. Not many people ask what happens to us. It's the only question that matters, Peter said. Rex didn't reply, but as they boarded the shuttle, he gave Peter's shoulder a firm, brief squeeze. It was a human gesture, a person's gesture. The shuttle launched, leaving the cruiser behind. Peter stared out at the stars, the shield generator's weight replaced by a heavier one in his soul. He'd seen the war up close now. He'd seen the machines, the cold logic of it, and the people caught in the gears. And he'd seen the hand moving those gears. Palpatine had made his move, and Anakin had just openly defied him. The lines were being drawn. Peter was no longer just a lost kid from Queens. He was a variable in a Sith Lord's equation. And he had a terrible feeling the only way to get home was to first help break the very machine that was trying to use him. The return to Coruscant was shrouded in a tense silence, thicker than the smog of Rexus Secundus. Anakin spent the journey in the cockpit, communicating in clipped tones with the temple. Ahsoka tried to lighten the mood with stories of her earliest missions, but even her usual brightness was dimmed. Rex and the clones maintained a watchful, professional quiet. Peter sat apart, reassembling his web shooters with meticulous focus, the familiar ritual grounding him. He had used his last standard web fluid. The twin canisters sat empty in his palms. He needed to solve that problem, and fast. When they touched down on the temple landing platform, Mace Windu was waiting, his expression as hard as stone. He didn't greet them. He simply said, "The Council, now." The chamber felt different this time. The usual aura of contemplative calm was gone, replaced by a sharp, anxious energy. Yoda's ears were lowered. Master Ki-Adi-Mundi's brow was furrowed deeply. "Defied a direct request from the Supreme Chancellor, you have," Yoda began, his gaze pinned on Anakin. "It wasn't a request, Master," Anakin countered, standing stiffly before the circle. "It was an order to transfer a civilian under Jedi protection into military custody. Spider-Man is not a Republic asset. He's a victim of circumstance who assisted us at great personal risk." "The Chancellor sees it differently," Mace said, his voice cold. "He has invoked emergency powers to classify Spider-Man as a strategic anomalous entity. The Senate will vote on granting him custodial authority tomorrow." Peter felt the floor lurch beneath him. "Custodial authority? You mean he wants to own me?" "He wants to ensure your abilities are understood and utilized for the security of the Republic," Mace replied, though he didn't sound like he believed his own words. "The incident on Rexus proved your potential value. It also proved I'm not a weapon." Peter's voice echoed in the chamber. "I helped complete your mission, but those clones down there, they're people. And the Chancellor, he's..." He trailed off, seeing the wall of skepticism on their faces. They wouldn't believe him, not yet. He changed tactics. He's using this to drive a wedge between you and the Senate. Can't you see that? See it. We do, Yoda said quietly. A political game, this is. But play it, we must. Lose the Senate's support and lose the war, we will. So you'll just hand me over? No. The word came from Anakin, fierce and final. Every head turned to him. We won't. The Jedi are guardians, not slave traders. He stays under our protection. Mace's eyes narrowed. Your personal feelings are clouding your judgment, Skywalker. My judgment is that we're supposed to protect the innocent. Anakin shot back. Handing him over to be dissected in some lab isn't protection. It's a betrayal of everything we stand for. The argument erupted, council members debating law, morality, and political necessity in hushed, urgent tones. Peter watched, feeling invisible and hypervisible all at once. A pawn in a debate about the soul of the Jedi Order. It was Master Plo Koon who broke the impasse. There may be a third path. His filtered voice resonated. The Chancellor's authority stems from the Senate. If we can delay the vote or influence key senators, we may avert this crisis without direct confrontation. And how do you propose we do that? Mace asked. Plo's masked head turned toward Peter. By demonstrating that our guest is not merely an asset, but a being of conscience. By having him speak. Me? Peter squeaked. The refugee relief movement is holding a Galaxar tonight, Plo continued. Senators Organa, Amidala, and other moderates will be there. They are sympathetic to the Jedi, but wary of the Chancellor's growing power. Spider-Man, if you were to appear to tell your story, not as a soldier, but as a lost soul appealing for help to return home, it could sway sentiment. It would frame you as a person, not a resource. The plan was risky, transparently political, and put Peter directly in the spotlight he'd spent years avoiding. His spider sense hummed, not with danger, but with the weight of a crossroads. I'll do it, he said, before he could second-guess himself. The Galaxar was held in the Uskru district, a sector of Coruscant that managed to feel both opulent and seedy. The venue was a sprawling cantina transformed for the night, filled with beings from 100 species, the air rich with exotic perfumes and the low thrum of conversation. Peter, once again in Jedi robes over his suit, felt like an imposter. Senator Bail Organa of Alderaan was the first to approach, his demeanor calm and statesmanlike. Spider-Man, Master Windu informed me of your situation. To be torn from your own reality, it's a profound tragedy. It's pretty weird, yeah, Peter said, trying to match the man's formal tone. I just want to go home, sir. But the Chancellor seems to think I'd be more useful staying here as a tool. Organa's eyes darkened. The concentration of power in a single office during wartime is a dangerous thing, even with the best intentions. He was interrupted by the arrival of Senator Padme Amidala. She was as regal as her hollows, but her eyes held a deep weariness. Bail, and you must be the anomaly, she said, offering a kind smile. I'm sorry for what you're enduring. No one should be used as a pawn. They formed a small, tense circle. Peter told them, in simple terms, about Earth, about his powers, about falling through the rift. He spoke about the clones on Rexus, about Rex. They saved my life. They're as brave as anyone I've ever met. They're not machines. And I don't think anyone here who calls them property really believes that either. They just find it convenient. Padme and Bail exchanged a heavy look. The Republic of our fathers would never have sanctioned an army of slaves, Padme whispered, pain in her voice. The Republic of our fathers is being dismantled, piece by piece, Bail replied. He looked at Peter. Your words have power, young one. They remind us of principles we're in danger of forgetting. I will speak against the custodial measure tomorrow. As will I, Padme affirmed. For a moment, Peter felt a glimmer of hope. These were good people. They could make a difference. Then his spider sense pierced through the noise of the crowd like a shard of ice. He turned. Across the room, moving through the crowd with the easy grace of a politician, was Chancellor Palpatine. He wasn't looking at Peter. He was smiling, shaking hands, dispensing grandfatherly wisdom. But Peter's every instinct screamed. The feeling was worse than before, a crushing, malevolent pressure that made the air feel thin. Palpatine's gaze swept the room and, as if by accident, met Peter's. The Chancellor's smile didn't change, but his eyes. For a fraction of a second, the kindly facade vanished. Peter saw infinite cold, an amused, predatory intellect that had seen his little political maneuver and found it quaint. Then it was gone, and Palpatine was making his way toward them. "Senators, and our mysterious guest." Palpatine's voice was warm. "I heard you might be here, my boy. I wanted to thank you personally for your service on Rexus. The data you retrieved will save countless Republic lives." "I was just trying to survive, Chancellor," Peter said, forcing his voice not to shake. "Survival and service often walk hand in hand," Palpatine mused. He placed a hand on Peter's shoulder. The contact made Peter's skin crawl. "You have a unique perspective, Spider-Man, one that could help us see our own conflicts more clearly. I do hope you'll consider sharing it more formally. The Republic values all voices." The threat was velvet-wrapped. "Stop talking to my political opponents. I just want to go home," Peter repeated, meeting the Chancellor's eyes. "And we will do everything in our power to help you," Palpatine said, his tone dripping with sincere concern. The lie was so perfect, Peter almost believed it himself. "But you must understand, in times of war, security sometimes necessitates temporary adjustments." He patted Peter's shoulder before turning to Bail and Padme. "Senators, a word about the Outer Rim Relief Bill? I value your input." He led them away, a benevolent leader seeking counsel. Padme glanced back at Peter, her expression one of profound apology. They were being pulled back into the system. Peter stood alone in the crowd, the echo of Palpatine's touch like a brand. The Chancellor hadn't come to the Galaxar by accident. He'd come to send a message. "I see your moves. They amuse me. They change nothing." The political path was a dead end. Palpatine controlled the game too completely. Dejected, Peter slipped out onto a balcony overlooking the district's neon-drenched chaos. He needed air that wasn't laced with deception. "Tough crowd, huh?" Peter spun. A new figure leaned against the balcony rail, a humanoid with blue skin, sharp features, and a smug grin. He wore stylish, non-military clothes and had a blaster pistol on his hip. "Who are you?" "Name's Cad Bane. Heard about you. The kid who fell from another world and has the Jedi and the Chancellor in a tug-of-war." Bane took a drag from a thin tube. "Makes you valuable. And people who are valuable to powerful folks often need friends in low places." Peter's spider sense pinged. Danger, but not immediate. This man was a predator, but a straightforward one. "You're a bounty hunter. The best. And I'm not in the business of owning people. I'm in the business of credits and information." Bane blew out a smoke ring. "I hear you're looking for a way home. The Jedi archives are one thing, but the galaxy's full of knowledge they ignore. Sith holocrons, Rakatan artifacts, dimensional theory from the Qua, all banned by your temple friends, all accessible for a price." I don't have any credits. You have something better. You're a ghost. No records, no identity. You can go places, get things that someone like me can't. We could come to an arrangement. Bane flicked his tube away. The Jedi want to use your morals. The Chancellor wants to use your body. I just want to use your skills. Seems a fairer trade. It was a devil's bargain. But as Peter looked back into the cantina, where Palpatine held court and the Jedi senators looked helpless, the offer didn't seem as insane as it should have. I'll think about it, Peter said. Bane tipped his hat. Don't think too long. The Chancellor's net is closing. My offer has an expiration date. He melted back into the shadows of the balcony, leaving Peter alone with the city's glow. Two paths lay before him: the failing light of the Jedi and the Republic, or the amoral shadows of the underworld. Both wanted something from him. Neither offered a pure way home. He looked down at his empty web shooters. He needed to reload. He needed to be Spider-Man again, not a political token or a potential asset. He needed to spin his own web. The temple, once a place of bewildering sanctuary, now felt like a gilded cage. Peter spent the next day in the archives, not seeking a way home, but for something more immediate. A chemistry text. The galaxy had to have polymers, catalysts, solvents. He just needed to translate a lifetime of knowledge in Queen's basement chemistry to a universe with different periodic tables and compound names. It was slow, frustrating work. The archival droids were unhelpful. Their programming focused on history and philosophy, not materials science. He was about to give up when he found her, Jocasta Nu, the chief librarian. She was a sharp-eyed woman who regarded him not as an anomaly, but as a patron with a peculiarly specific request. Web fluid? She echoed, adjusting her glasses. An adhesive delivery system, you say? For swinging? And immobilizing, Peter said, demonstrating the empty shooter. My formula uses a polyester-based resin, cross-linked with a... She held up a hand. The carbon chains here will have different stable isotopes. Coruscant's industrial sector uses a sealant called Duratape for hull breaches. Its base is a thioethene polymer, suspended in a methyl acetate solvent. It's highly volatile until exposed to ionized air, where it forms a rigid, elastic matrix. She eyed him. With your described tensile needs, you'd want to add a nanotube filament for shear strength. The black markets in the lower levels sell confiscated Mandalorian Beskar weave filaments. They're expensive. Peter stared at her, a slow grin spreading under his mask. You're amazing. Knowledge is my domain, young man, she said primly, but a hint of a smile touched her lips. The ingredients, while uncommon, are not restricted. Acquiring them, however, will be difficult. The temple does not typically procure industrial adhesives and illegal filaments. He had the recipe. Now he needed the ingredients, and he knew exactly who to ask. He found Rex in the temple barracks, polishing his armor. The clone captain looked up, his expression unreadable behind his helmet, which was off beside him. Captain, I need a favor, and I can't ask the Jedi. Rex set his cloth down slowly. That sounds like the beginning of a court-martial. It's not for the war, Peter said, pulling out the datapad with news list. It's for me, to make my webs, to be me again, not just the thing everyone's fighting over. Rex scanned the list. Thioethene polymer, methyl acetate. These are industrial supplies. The Beskar filament. He whistled. That's special forces gear. How did you... The librarian. Look, I know it's a lot to ask, but you have access to procurement, to the lower levels on patrol. I can't go myself. Palpatine's probably got eyes on every temple exit. Rex was silent for a long moment, studying Peter's face. Then he nodded once. I have a brother in logistics, and I know a guy in the 212th who acquires things. It might take a day. But, Spider-Man, why come to me? Why not Commander Tano or General Skywalker? Because they'd have to report it, or they'd try to stop me. You understand doing what needs to be done, even if it's not in the manual. A ghost of a smile touched Rex's weathered face. Yeah, I do. He took the datapad. Consider it done. True to his word, 20 hours later, a nondescript crate was left outside Peter's door. Inside, carefully packaged, were all the chemicals and a spool of dark, incredibly fine metallic thread. There was no note, just the supplies. The next part was the fun part. He commandeered an unused meditation chamber, claiming he needed solitude. Inside, using repurposed lab equipment, borrowed from the temple's science wing, he became Peter Parker, chemist once more. The smells were wrong. The thiothene had a sharp, coppery tang, and the reactions behaved differently under Coruscant's air pressure. But the principles were the same. He synthesized, distilled, and pressurized. He wove the Beskar filament into the polymer mix, creating a core that could hold insane tension. Finally, with a hiss click, he loaded 2 fresh, full cartridges into his shooters. The weight on his wrists was the most comforting thing he'd felt in days. He was Spider-Man again. He didn't have time to test them. His door chimed. It was Mace Windu, his face grave. The Senate vote is in 3 hours. Senators Organa and Amidala have rallied significant opposition. But the Chancellor's bloc is powerful. The outcome is uncertain. He paused. The Chancellor has requested your presence in the Senate rotunda for the vote. He claims it is for transparency. I advise against it. Peter's spider sense flared. It wasn't a request. It was a summons. A public display of power. If I don't go, he wins by default. He can say I'm hiding, that I'm dangerous. If you do go, you walk into his arena. Peter thought of the full web shooters on his wrists. He thought of Rex's silent help. He wasn't powerless anymore. I'm going. The Senate rotunda was a thunderous spectacle. Hundreds of floating pods, each representing a star system, hovered in a vast chamber. The din of arguments, amplified by speakers, was a physical force. Peter stood in the Chancellor's podium pod, feeling microscopic. Palpatine sat on his raised seat, a benign monarch overlooking his domain. Anakin and Mace stood stiffly nearby, Jedi guards in a political arena. The debate raged. Bail Organa spoke with passionate eloquence about liberty and the dangers of militarizing sentient beings. His words were met with applause from some pods, jeers from others. Padme followed, her voice trembling with emotion as she spoke of the soul of the Republic. Then Palpatine rose. The chamber fell silent. My dear friends of the Senate, he began, his voice amplified to a gentle, paternal boom. We are at war, a war for our very survival. In such times, we must sometimes make difficult choices to secure the safety of the many. He gestured to Peter. This young being is a mystery that fell into our lap. He possesses abilities that could shield our troopers, save our starships, turn the tide of battles, and save lives. He paused, letting the words hang. To ignore this gift, to let fear of the unknown paralyze us, would be a betrayal of those who fight and die for us every day. This is not about ownership. It is about stewardship, about using every tool at our disposal to end this conflict quickly, so that we may return to peace, to liberty, to the values our good senators so cherish. It was masterful. He framed custody as compassion, control as responsibility. Peter watched as senators who had been wavering nodded along. The vote was called, A wave of light began to sweep through the pods, green for the custodial measure, red against. It was close, painfully close. But as the tally finalized, a majority glowed green. Palpatine's smile was a quiet victory. The will of the Senate is clear. For the security of the Republic, the being known as Spider-Man shall be transferred to a secure Republic facility for study and integration into our defense efforts. Peter's heart sank. It was over. The system had spoken. But then, a new voice crackled across the system. A voice from a pod that had voted green. Chancellor, a priority alert from the CSF. There's an attack in the Uskru district. A building collapse at the Amud Heights residential spire. Thousands trapped. A holographic news feed flickered to life above the rotunda, showing a towering skyscraper, its mid-levels shrouded in dust and fire, leaning precariously. Chaos erupted. Palpatine's face tightened with annoyance, quickly masked as concern. Order. We must dispatch rescue teams immediately. But the rescue feeds showed the problem. The collapse was too unstable. Repulsor lift platforms couldn't get close. The gaps were too narrow for most rescue droids. It was a tangled tomb of durasteel and transparasteel. Peter looked at the hologram, at the panicked faces in the upper windows, at the fire creeping upward. He looked at Palpatine, who was already turning to issue commands to the military. He made his choice. Without a word, he backed to the edge of the pod. Anakin saw his movement. "Spider-Man, don't..." But Peter was already gone. He leapt into the open air of the rotunda's vast space. Shouts echoed. He fired a web. Thwip. The new formula worked perfectly. The line shot out, latched onto a passing senatorial pod, and he swung, a sudden, unexpected arc of red and blue against the solemn gray of the Senate. He fired again and again, a wild, accelerating swing toward the main exit tunnel. He zipped past stunned politicians, through security screens that flashed but didn't stop him, and out into the Coruscant skyline. The wind tore at him. The city spread out, a map of tragedy. He could see the column of smoke in the distance. His spider sense mapped the air currents, the potential swing paths. This was his language. Not politics, not war. This was a building in trouble. These were people to save. Behind him, in the Senate pod, Palpatine watched him disappear, his benevolent smile frozen. The public spectacle had just been stolen from him, transformed into a very different kind of spectacle. Anakin stepped forward, staring after Peter with a mixture of alarm and dawning understanding. "He's not going to a lab," Anakin said, half to himself. "No," Mace Windu replied, his eyes fixed on the distant smoke. "He's going to be a hero." And in that moment, before the entire galaxy, broadcast on every newsfeed, Spider-Man declared his independence not with a speech, but with a swing. He wasn't Republic, he wasn't Jedi, he wasn't for sale. He was the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. And his neighborhood had just gotten a whole lot bigger. The wind screamed in Peter's ears, a familiar song of velocity and peril. He'd swung through the collapsing dimensions of Doctor Strange's mirror dimension, through the artificial tornadoes of Mysterio's illusions. But nothing compared to the sheer, vertical scale of Coruscant. The Amud Heights spire wasn't just a building. It was a mountain of inhabited metal. And a quarter of the way up, it was dying. Smoke billowed from a jagged wound where several floors had pancaked. Fire licked up through the exposed skeleton. Speeder traffic had stalled, creating a chaotic halo of flashing lights and hovering vehicles. Official rescue LAT is circled at a safe distance, their spotlights illuminating the devastation, but unable to get closer to the unstable structure. Peter's spider sense painted the scene in layers of danger. The groaning strain of tortured durasteel, the heat plumes from the fires, the shivering vibration of parts about to give way. He angled his swing, descending toward the chaos. He landed on a relatively intact section 20 floors above the collapse, the metal hot beneath his feet. Immediately, he was in the thick of it. Civilians, a mix of species, all coated in dust and panic, were streaming from access stairs, some helping others, some frozen in terror. "This way. Keep moving down, but stay off the eastern stairwell, it's buckling," he shouted, his voice cutting through the din. A few looked at him, this strangely dressed figure who dropped from the sky, and instinctive trust overrode confusion. They followed his direction. A Twi'lek mother was trying to drag a heavy decompression door shut against a spreading fire, her 2 children clinging to her legs. The heat was overwhelming her. Peter webbed the door frame above the fire, creating a temporary heat shield, then grabbed the door. "Go! I've got it!" With a grunt of effort, he slammed the blast door shut, sealing the inferno behind it. He didn't stop. He became a blur of motion, a one-man rescue operation operating on instinct and his screaming spider sense. Web line across that gap for people to use as a handrail. Thwip thwip. A net to catch falling debris before it crushed a group below. Punch through a jammed door to clear an escape route. Use a web to snag a falling Rodian child, swinging them to safety on a neighboring balcony. He worked his way down toward the heart of the collapse. Here, the damage was apocalyptic. Floors had folded into each other, creating a deadly labyrinth of twisted beams, shattered glass, and sparking wires. His spider sense was a constant, piercing shriek, forcing him to duck, leap, and contort as chunks of the building shifted and fell. He found survivors trapped in air pockets, a Gran pinned under a beam. He lifted it, his muscles screaming, and webbed it in place. A family of humans in a crushed apartment, the father using his body to shield them from a dripping coolant pipe. Peter webbed the pipe, shut, then carefully cut through debris with focused bursts of webbing to pull them free. He lost track of time. His world narrowed to the next cry for help, the next groan of failing metal, the next thwip of his webs. His new formula held, strong, elastic, instantly bonding. It was the only thing keeping entire sections from crumbling. Then he heard it, over the roar of fire and sirens. A child's scream, not from the periphery, but from deep within the collapse cavity. His spider's sense zeroed in on it, a bright point of desperation in the haze of danger. He swung down into the pit. The air was choked with dust and acrid smoke. There, in a cavity formed by a collapsed floor and a leaning support column, was a little Togruta girl, maybe 4 years old, her white and blue leku stained with soot. She was pinned not by debris, but by fear, curled up and crying. The column supporting her cavity groaned. Above it, several massive structural members were sliding, grinding against each other. If they went, the entire cavity and the girl would be crushed. There was no clear path. The shifting debris had sealed the way he'd come. "Hey, look at me," Peter called, landing lightly a few meters away. The girl looked up, her large eyes wide with terror. "It's okay. I'm going to get you out. My name's Spider-Man. What's yours?" Mina, she hiccuped. "Okay, Mina. I need you to be really brave for me. I'm going to come get you, but I need you to close your eyes and count to 10. Can you do that?" She nodded, squeezing her eyes shut. 1, 2. Peter's mind raced. The geometry was a nightmare. The column was the keystone. If it went, everything went. He had to stabilize it and get the girl and get out, all in seconds. He fired webs in a rapid, precise sequence. 2 lines to anchor the sliding beams above to more stable structures on either side, creating a makeshift brace. A third, thicker web cable around the groaning column itself, attached to a solid anchor point across the cavity. He pulled it taut, the Beskar filament in the webbing creaking but holding. The shifting slowed. 7, 8. He dove into the cavity, scooping Mina into his arms. Gotcha! Now hold on tight. He turned to leave. The exit was gone. A fresh collapse had sealed it. His only path was up, through a tangled web of rebar and shattered plumbing. 9, 10. Perfect counting, Peter said, injecting a cheer into his voice he didn't feel. He fired a web upward to a dangling I-beam. Okay, Mina, we're going for a swing, just like in the gardens. He leaped, swinging them out of the cavity just as the column, even with its web brace, gave a final, shuddering crack and buckled. The cavity imploded behind them in a roar of dust and noise. Peter swung them through a gauntlet of falling debris, his spider sense guiding him through the lethal rain. He spotted a Republic rescue shuttle that had daringly moved closer, its ramp open. He aimed for it. With a final, straining swing, he arced through the smoke and landed on the ramp, rolling to absorb the impact, shielding Mina with his body. Medics rushed forward, taking the sobbing girl from his arms. He stood up, chest heaving, suit torn and smoldering in places. He looked back at the spire. The fires were being contained. Rescue streams were now penetrating deeper. The immediate cascading collapse had been stabilized, in no small part because of the chaotic, improvised web braces he'd slapped throughout the structure. He'd done it. Then, a new sound cut through the cacophony, the distinctive roar of Jedi starfighters. 2 Delta 7s screamed overhead, followed by a Jedi shuttle that settled on a nearby platform. Anakin Skywalker and Ahsoka Tano leapt out, lightsabers not ignited, their faces set with urgency. They weren't here for the rescue. They were here for him. Anakin's eyes found him on the rescue shuttle ramp. Spider-Man, you have to come with us, now. Peter's spider sense, still buzzing from the physical danger, now pinged with a different kind of threat. What's wrong? The Chancellor, Ahsoka said, her voice low. He's declared your actions at the Senate an act of desertion from Republic custody. He's issued a Priority 1 detainment order. The Coruscant Guard is mobilizing to take you. They're not coming to ask nicely. Peter stared at them, the adrenaline crash making his limbs feel heavy. He'd just saved dozens, maybe hundreds, and the response was to send soldiers after him. He can't do that, Peter said, but it sounded hollow. Of course Palpatine could. He'd just won the vote. He has, Anakin said, grim. And if they take you, you disappear into a black site. We won't be able to protect you. He extended a hand. Come with us, to the temple. It's the only place they might hesitate to storm. It was the offer of sanctuary. But Peter looked from Anakin's offered hand to the spire, where beings were still being pulled from the wreckage, to the lower city streets where news feeds were probably broadcasting his every move. Going with Anakin meant hiding. It meant becoming the Jedi's secret, their fugitive. It meant playing defense in Palpatine's game. He thought of Cad Bane's offer, the amoral freedom of the shadows. He thought of the clones like Rex, trapped in a system that called them property. He thought of Mina, the Togruta girl, safe because he'd acted outside anyone's permission. His spider sense wasn't screaming about Anakin or Ahsoka. They were friends. But it hummed with the certainty that their path, the path of the fading light, led to a trap just as surely as Palpatine's lab did. He took a step back, off the rescue shuttle ramp. I can't, he said, the words hurting. If I go with you, I'm just a different kind of prisoner, and it puts a target on the temple. He's looking for an excuse to move against you. I won't be that excuse. Anakin's face fell. Peter, you can't survive out here alone. The entire planet will be looking for you. I've been looking over my shoulder since I was 15, Peter said, a tired smile touching his voice. "I'm good at it." He looked at Ahsoka. "Thank you for everything." He saw the conflict in their eyes, the duty to protect, the fear for him, the frustration. They were Jedi. They were bound by codes, by loyalty to a crumbling republic. He wasn't. "What will you do?" Ahsoka asked. Peter looked out at the endless city, its million lights beginning to glitter in the evening smog. Somewhere down there was information, technology, maybe even a way home. Somewhere down there was a spider named Bane who dealt in secrets. "What I always do," Spider-Man said. "I'm going to look out for the little guy, and I'm going to find a way to trip up the big guy." He tapped his web shooter. "I'm going to be a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. It's just, the neighborhood got a lot bigger." He saw the Coruscant guard gunships now, their red lights piercing the twilight, heading their way. "Go," he said to the Jedi, "before they see you with me." Anakin held his gaze for a long second, then gave a sharp, reluctant nod. "May the Force be with you, Spider-Man." "You too." As the Jedi hurried back to their shuttle, Peter turned and ran to the edge of the platform. Below was the true Coruscant, the lower levels, the underworld, a city beneath the City of Lights. The gunships were closing. Spotlights swept the area. He didn't look back. He leaped into the deepening gloom, firing a web into the dark canyon between towers. He swung down, away from the light, away from the Senate, away from the temple, into the great, unknowable belly of the galactic capital. Above, the official story would be written. The anomalous entity had fled Republic custody, dangerous and unstable. But in the streets, in the apartments, in the homes of those he'd pulled from the wreckage, another story was being told. About a red and blue streak in the smoke, about webs holding up the sky, about a hero who asked for nothing and disappeared into the dark. Palpatine had won the vote. He had the law on his side. But Spider-Man had just won something else. The people. And as he vanished into the neon-soaked alleyways, a ghost in a war-torn galaxy, his spider sense hummed with a new, defiant certainty. The game wasn't over. It had just changed boards. The underbelly of Coruscant was a different organism entirely. Down here, the polished sky lanes and gleaming spires were just a distant ceiling, a false sky of filtered light. The air was thick with the smells of decay, industry, and too many bodies. Glowing signs in a dozen scripts advertised cantinas, repair shops, and less savory establishments. Speeders were older, louder, and modified with armor and illegal weaponry. This was a world that survived on anonymity, and Peter Parker embraced it. He found refuge in a forgotten substation, a cavernous space filled with dead power converters and the skeletons of ancient machinery. It was dry, defensible, and most importantly, off the grid. Using scavenged parts and his scientific ingenuity, he rigged a passive alert system using tripwires and motion sensors linked to his spider sense, a crude early warning net. His first priority was sustainability. The web fluid recipe worked, but the ingredients were expensive. He needed credits. He also needed information about dimensional theory, about the Sith, about any crack in Palpatine's armor. He became a ghost in the machine. He didn't fight the war. He fought for the people the war crushed. A gang extorting protection money from a lower-level market. He'd web them to the ceiling and leave the credits for the shopkeepers. A slaver ring operating under the notice of the overstretched Coruscant security force. He'd dismantle their operation, leaving the perpetrators webbed up with evidence for the CSF to find. He never stuck around for thanks. He was a rumor, a flicker of red and blue in the shadows. The underworld dubbed him the Spectre, or the Wall Crawler. The official news, controlled by Palpatine's influence, dismissed him as a fugitive vandal. But in the lower levels, a different story spread. He kept his ear to the ground, listening for the specific kind of information Cad Bane had dangled. It was on a rainy cycle, while covertly monitoring a comm chatter in a hacker den he'd helped, that he heard it. A fragment about a Kessel-run artifact being moved through the underworld. An object that allegedly predated the Republic and was rumored to sing to the spaces between stars. It was the lead he needed, and tracking it led him, inevitably, back to Cad Bane. The bounty hunter was in a dimly lit cantina called the Flayed Mynock, dealing with a disagreeable Klatooinian. Peter observed from the rafters. Bane ended the negotiation not with blaster fire, but with a sharp, precise strike to a nerve cluster, dropping the thug without a sound. Efficient, professional. Peter dropped down behind him as the Klatooinian hit the floor. "You're a hard man to find," Bane said without turning, sipping his drink. "But then, so am I. Heard about your extracurriculars. Noble, doesn't pay the bills." "I heard about the Kessel artifact," Peter said, keeping his distance. Bane finally turned, his red eyes gleaming. "Ah, that. Yeah, it's real. A chunk of a gateway built by the Qua. They could fold space without hyperdrives. Their tech makes Sith alchemy look like child's play." He set his glass down. "The Pike Syndicate has it. They don't know what it is. Just that it's old and valuable. They're moving it to a private collector on Christophsis tonight. And you want it. I want the commission from the collector. You, I assume, want to study it for a way home." Bane leaned forward. "Here's the deal, kid. The Pikes are moving it through the old plasma conduit network beneath the industrial sector. Tight spaces, lots of security drones. Bad for me, perfect for you. You get in, swap the artifact with a convincing fake I'll provide, get out. I get paid. You get your artifact. And why wouldn't you just shoot me and take it after I do all the work? Because I'm a professional, not an idiot. You're more useful alive. The Jedi like you. The Chancellor fears you. That makes you valuable long-term. This is an investment." Bane smiled, all sharp teeth. "So? Partnership?" It was a devil's deal. But the artifact was a tangible hope. And Bane was right. The tight, vertical environment of the conduit network was his perfect battlefield. "We do it my way," Peter said. "No killing." Bane shrugged. "Knock 'em out, web 'em up, I don't care. Just get the goods." The plasma conduits were a forgotten circulatory system, massive tunnels buzzing with residual energy, patrolled by sleek, silent security droids. Peter moved through them like a spider in its own web, clinging to shadows, disabling droids with precisely aimed web shots to their photoreceptors and joints. He located the Pike convoy, a repulsor sled carrying a sealed vault, guarded by a dozen Pike enforcers and 2 heavier droids. He created a distraction, using webbing to trigger an ancient pressure valve, releasing a gout of harmless but startling steam. As the guards reacted, he swooped in from above, webbing weapons, sealing blast doors to separate forces, moving too fast to hit. He wasn't fighting to injure, but to incapacitate and confuse. Within minutes, the convoy was a mess of webbed-up, disoriented Pikes. He cracked the vault, a simple matter of webbing the locking mechanism and pulling with enhanced strength, made the switch, and vanished back into the ducts as alarms finally began to sound. He met Bane at the rendezvous, tossing him the real artifact, a smooth, iridescent stone that seemed to swallow the light. Bane caught it, his eyes wide with genuine avarice. "Nice work, kid. Clean." "My end of the deal," Peter said, holding out his hand for the fake. Bane tossed it to him. "Pleasure doing business. You ever need work, you know how to find me." He tipped his hat and melted into the gloom. Peter returned to his substation hideout with the Qua artifact. It hummed with a low, unfamiliar energy that made his spider sense vibrate in a new, curious way. It wasn't a threat, it was a frequency. For the first time since arriving, he felt a spark of real scientific hope. This was a piece of a puzzle. His activities didn't go unnoticed. In the Jedi Temple, Anakin and Ahsoka tracked the rumors of the wall crawler, recognizing his methods. They didn't try to bring him in. They began quietly redirecting CSF attention away from his areas of operation. In the Senate building, Palpatine's irritation grew. The Spider-Man variable was not behaving like a variable should. He wasn't hiding in fear. He wasn't coming to the light. He was becoming a symbol in the shadows, one that operated outside the control of both Jedi and Sith. Palpatine didn't fear Spider-Man's power. He feared his influence. His example of uncompromising, independent morality was a toxin to the culture of fear and obedience the Sith Lord was cultivating. Palpatine's response was subtle. He increased patrols in the lower levels. He seeded rumors on the holonet painting the vigilante as a dangerous anarchist. He tasked specific, ruthless elements within the Coruscant Guard with finding and eliminating the fugitive. The clash was inevitable. It happened when a Coruscant Guard commander, eager for promotion, decided to flush out the Spectre by setting a trap. They took hostages in a sector known for the wall crawler's activity, threatening to deport them to a mining colony unless the vigilante surrendered. Peter knew it was a trap. His spider sense screamed it. But the principle was the same as it had always been. When the bad guys hold a gun to the innocent, Spider-Man steps in. The confrontation took place in a vast recycling plant. The guards had the high ground, the hostages, and heavy weapons. Peter had the dark, the verticality, and the element of surprise. He swung through the forest of machinery, a ghost in the gloom. He didn't engage the soldiers directly. He cut power, webbed weapons to walls, used the environment. He freed the hostages one group at a time, webbing escape routes for them. But the commander was clever. He'd rigged the plant's magnetic crushers to activate, planning to crush the entire central area once Spider-Man was lured in. Peter's spider sense shrieked a final warning as the great magnets powered up. He was in the center with the last group of hostages. There was no time to get them all out. Thinking fast, he webbed the hostages together into a tight group, then used every remaining cartridge in his shooters to create a colossal, dense web cocoon around them, anchoring it to the strongest supports he could find. He reinforced it with strands of the nearly unbreakable Beskar weave filament. The magnets engaged. The entire central chamber convulsed. Machinery was ripped from its moorings and crushed into a ball of scrap. When the power died and the dust settled, the Coruscant Guard moved in. In the center of the devastation hung a single, battered web cocoon, dented but intact. The hostages inside were shaken, but alive. Of Spider-Man, there was no sign. He'd used the last of his strength to get them safe, and had barely escaped the crushing field himself, now clinging to the outer wall of the plant, exhausted and out of web fluid. He watched as the guard, defeated and humiliated, collected the hostages. He heard one of the freed beings, a old Duros, say to the commander, "You hunt a hero. You should be thanking him." The words carried further than the old Duros knew. They were recorded, they spread. Peter slipped away, back to the dark. He was bruised, depleted, but not defeated. He had an artifact to study, a people to protect, and a Sith Lord to thwart. He was no longer just a lost hero. He was a splinter in the Empire's boot, a whisper of another way, a spider, spinning a web of hope in the darkest corners of a galaxy falling to darkness. And in the infinite tapestry of the multiverse, a new thread gleamed, vibrant, defiant, and utterly unpredictable. Spider-Man did not return to the light, nor did he vanish into the shadows. He carved a third path in the stone of a galaxy at war. On Coruscant, the legend of the wall-crawler grew, a specter who fought for the little people, asking for nothing, embodying a responsibility that transcended factions. He became a symbol that neither the Jedi's fading light nor the Chancellor's creeping shadow could extinguish. Peter Parker, the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, had made the entire galactic Undercity his neighborhood. The Qua artifact, studied in stolen moments, hummed with secrets of dimensional folding. A way home was no longer a fantasy, but a difficult equation waiting to be solved. His presence had already altered the calculus of the Clone Wars. The clones had a folk hero. The people had hope. And in the Senate's highest office, Chancellor Palpatine faced a new, frustrating kind of resistance. Not an army to crush, but an idea that kept slipping through his fingers. Anakin Skywalker watched the reports, a conflicted admiration growing in his heart. Here was someone who lived the ideal of protection without the Jedi's constraints, a reflection of the man Anakin wanted to be, and a warning of the lonely path he himself might walk. The threads of destiny were tangling around this stranger from the stars. Spider-Man's story in the galaxy far, far away was not over. It was a new web, still being spun. He was a wild card in the Sith's grand design, a hero operating on a simple, unshakable code in a universe of collapsing complexity. He would find a way home, but not before leaving an indelible mark. Proof that even in the darkest of times, with great power, there was always a choice, and with great responsibility, there was always a way.